results in the site. So one more thing, one more method I will do today. So remaining I will do in the next class. So this is transporting. So after mixing of concreting is done. So mixing will be done homogeneously. So it is a next step has to follow that homogeneous concrete while transporting also from one place to the another place. So transportation of concrete is an important activity in the production of concrete, because whatever the homogeneity that is obtained at the time of mixing, even at the time of transporting the concrete, the homogeneity should not be lost. The homogeneity whatever we obtain from mixing, it should be same even while transporting also to the place where we need to transport. So there are different types of uh, transportation of concrete. So most of you have seen this. First one is mortar pan. So most of you have seen the pan. Okay, so it will not be thoroughly in this shape, it will be in a rounded shape. Okay, most of you have seen this. So it is a common method that is adopted in our country. So it is a labor intensive method. You can see if you are using a mortar pan to transport the concrete from one place to the another place, there will be so many labors that will be so many labors will be used to transport the concrete for one place to the another place, even if it is used for a smaller works. So it is a labor intensive method because there are more chances, more labors will be used in this method. So no chance of segregation in the concrete, because whatever the concrete that is obtained from the mixer, with the help of a pan you are transporting the concrete to the place. So there are no chances of getting a segregation in the concrete. But this method results in the greater loss of the water, especially if you are using this mortar technique in the hot weather condition, or if you are using in a low humidity condition. There are more chances of getting a substantial loss of water due to the environmental conditions. That is, if the mortar pan is used in the hot weather condition or in a low humidity, so there are more chances of getting a more loss of water. And also, before using a concrete in the mortar pan, so the mortar pan should be neatly wetted, because it should not be dry. If the mortar pan is dry, then the whatever the moisture which is there in the concrete, there are more chances that mortar pan only will take up that water if the mortar surface is dry. So it should be wet before the concrete is used, and at every stage it should be clean. Okay. And also, concrete in the mortar pan, it is usually carried in the small quantities. You should know, what is the volume of the what will be the volume of the mortar pan. It will be very small. So that's why even the concrete also carried in the small quantities. So in mortar pan you can able to easily convey the concrete, or you can easily transport the concrete at the ground level, or even below the ground level, or above the ground level also. This mortar pan can be used to neatly transport the concrete. So these are the explanation for the mortar pan. So most of you have seen this. Okay. So next we'll go to the wheelbarrow. So most of you have used this, also have seen um, for one of the event that has to be done for the tiara. I have seen most of them have used this wheelbarrow also to transfer the cube from concrete lab to the BMT lab. I have seen this. Of your classmates have done this. So wheelbarrows are generally used to transport the concrete for the longer distance, especially for the road construction or for similar types of construction where the concrete has to be traveled over the longer distances. Then wheelbarrow is used. So the disadvantages of this wheelbarrow is, there are more chances of getting a concrete segregated, because if the concrete has to be traveled from one place to the another place where the distance is quite long enough, so the concrete has to be transported over that long distance. So over that long distance when they are transferring, so there will be a wheel and it has to be transported through road. So the road surface will be rough due to the friction between the tire, due to which friction between the wheel and the road surface, there are more chances of getting a vibration to the concrete. So this leads to the segregation of the concrete. Okay, that is one of the disadvantages of wheelbarrow, where when there is a segregation happening, then coarse aggregate and fine aggregate will set at the bottom and the cement paste will set at the top. So this can be prevented by using a pneumatic rubber wheel, so that the vibration will be reduced. Once the vibration will be reduced, then there are segregation also will be reduced. So I have a small video of both.
Transportation of concrete part 1. In our previous videos, We have seen different methods of mixing concrete depend upon the size of the work, the terrain. Some common methods of transporting concrete are as shown on the screen. In this video, we are going to see about mortar pan and wheelbarrow transportation of concrete. Mortar pan. This is the common method of transporting concrete. The pans are filled with the concrete and are passed from hand to hand, but it is slow process and consume huge labor cost. As the pan capacity is small, more and more concrete area is exposed to the atmosphere during transportation. This may sometimes lead to evaporation of water from concrete during hot weather condition. The advantage of this method of transportation is the concrete can be deposited for both above and below concreting without segregation. Wheelbarrow. This type of transporting method is used for placing concrete in ground level. This method is used for concreting rigid pavements. The wheelbarrow is fixed with pneumatic wheels to facilitate the movement. In case of uneven ground surface, segregation of concrete may occur. So, in this case, the wooden planks are placed in the path of transportation, so it will result in reduced segregation. The average capacity of a wheelbarrow is 35.
So you saw what the advantages and disadvantages of mortar pan and as well as the wheelbarrow. So you should remember 4 M's in our any of the work. Okay, 4 M's, that is men, material, machine, and money. Okay, so you know what is the labor cost for one day. Okay, so the labor intensive, that is the labor cost for one day, is quite more nowadays. So if you use a mortar pan, you require a lot of labors. So if you require a lot of labors, then the cost also will go high. So if you use wheelbarrow, if you use a pneumatic tire wheelbarrow, then it is good for concrete because it will not tends to segregate. If you are using wheelbarrow without any rubber tires, okay, then there are concrete, whatever the homogeneity that is obtained in the mixing, that mixing will be lost, completely lost, if you use a wheelbarrow. Next is a chute. So you saw the picture of the chute in the tilting drum type, non-tilting drum type. So this layout of the chute is generally made in such a way that that is, the slope of the chute is made in such a way that the concrete should the concrete is allowed to fall homogeneously, that is, the entire mass of the concrete is allowed to fall as it is. So if you make a steeper slope, or if you make the slope as zero, if you make a steeper slope, then all the core segregate, since it has more weight, it will follow first. If you make no slope, then the concrete will not flow only. Okay, so the slope is made in such a way that the concrete, whatever the homogeneity is obtained from the mixing, the same homogeneous concrete has to be followed to the ground level. The slope is made in such a way that the concrete will not slide down, it should um, uh, it should follow whatever the homogeneity which is obtained from the mixing. So it is generally used for concreting for a ground level to a lower level, okay, or from higher level to a lower level. So the section of a chute is made in such a way that it is made up of a metal. Okay, so generally the slope of it is 1 vertical to 2.5 times of horizontal. In order to get a good homogeneous concrete from the mixer, from the mixing to the place where it has to be transported, the slope of the chute should be in such a way that it is 1 vertical to 2.5 times of or horizontal. Otherwise, if you don't follow this slope, the concrete will slide down and there are more chances of getting a concrete segregated. So technically speaking, you should not change the consistency of water by adding more water, so that the concrete has to be neatly sloped down to the place where it has to be transported. We should not we should not change the consistency by adding the more water to it. So technically speaking, it is not a good method of transporting the concrete, but it is widely used in almost everywhere, in almost every work it is widely used. Why? Because sometimes there will be a lack of space for the movement for the labor, or sometimes there is a fear of disturbing the reinforcement. So in that case, they will go for this method, that is by using a chute. But technically speaking, it is not a good method to transport the concrete, but it is extensively used in the field because of some uh, because of some disturbances in the site, whether labor cannot move over that place, or reinforcement will be disturbed. There will be some obstructions in the site. Due to that obstruction, this method is widely used. So this is a picture of the chute, you can see, okay, to transport the concrete. So next is skip and hoist. So this is one of the widely used method for transporting the concrete, especially in the vertical direction, especially in the for multi-story building, where the concrete has to be transferred from lower level to the higher level in the vertical direction. So this method is widely used because employing the mortar pan, or by staging a human ladder. You might have seen in for small scale work, where the people will be standing above the scaffolding, where the mortar pan, with the help of a mortar pan from the bottom, they will throw at every levels, and then it will be transported to the place. So employing mortar pan and human ladder for transporting the concrete is not possible more than 3 to 4 floors. Okay, so it is not a good method to transport the concrete by means of a mortar pan or by human ladder more than 4 floors. In that case, so they will use skip and hoist method, where the materials will be directly fed into the skip, and by means of a pulley arrangement, the skip will travel by means of a rail. It will travel to that place it has to be transported, and then the concrete will be discharged over there automatically or by means of a manually. So skip and hoist method, as already told, there are three types. One is a chain hoist, platform hoist, and skip and hoist. So skip and hoist method is quite economical and efficient also compared to the chain hoist and the platform hoist method. And here the quality of segregation will depends on the uh, extent of time of travel, from where how much time it is traveled from ground level to the higher level. The extent of travel indicates the effect of segregation, and the railing over the rails, due to whether there is any vibration when the skip taken through the railings. If there is any vibration, then there will be uh, more chances of getting a concrete segregated. Whereas skip and hoist method for multi-story buildings, or where the concrete has to be traveled vertically, then skip and hoist method is a good method instead of adopting any other technique. So I have a small video.
Transportation of concrete Part 4. Chute and skip hoist methods. 1 in vertical to 2.5 horizontal. The layout of the chute should be made in such a way that the concrete will slide evenly in a compact mass without any separation or segregation. This method is not commonly adopted in the construction site. It is adopted only when there is lack of space for movement of labors or congested reinforcement. Skip and hoist method. This method is commonly adopted one for transporting concrete vertically up for multi-story building construction, as employing mortar pan, adders etc. for transporting concrete would be uneconomical for multi-story buildings. In this case, skip and hoist method would be economical and faster. This method is adopted in 3 different ways: chain hoist or platform hoist or skip hoist. The skips are filled at the ground level and lift up by the pulley arrangement connected to the motor device at bottom of a hoist. After reaching the certain height, the concrete is placed by automatic arrangement or by manual operations. The occurrence of segregation of concrete depends upon the extent of travel and rolling over the rails. If the skip has to travel for higher distances, it is necessary that the concrete should be remixed before placing.
So I hope you understood the method of chute and skip and hoist. So skip and hoist is generally used, even I have seen in Mangalore also. in the near Bijay there was a construction going on next to Rasa Prakash Hotel, what us know in Bijay. So there in Bijay I have seen the construction by they are used to transport the concrete by means of a skip and hoist. So in skip and hoist the material has been fed inside the skip, and by means of a pulley arrangement it is rolled over the top where it has to be transported. If the transportation is done for a longer for a more height, then we have to remix it once again so that there is no chances of getting a segregation in it. So next is another two types are there. So belt conveyor. So belt conveyor has a limited application in the concrete construction. Why? Because due to the steep slope, there is a chance of getting a segregation on the steep slope, and also the belt is conveyed over the wheel, so there are more chances of getting segregation because of the vibration in it. And also belt conveyor, since more concrete will be exposed to the environment, there are more chances of getting a concrete dry, and especially in the hot dry condition. Since the concrete is been exposed over a long stretch, then there are more chances of getting a concrete dry. That is also one of the other disadvantages of a belt conveyor. So segregation may take place due to vibration of rubber belt, as I already told. Due to the vibration of the rubber belt where the belt is conveyed, so there is will be a vibration, because if the concrete has to be traveled through the belt, there will be a motor. So if there is a if it is transported by means of an electrical, definitely there will be a more chances of getting a concrete segregate because of the vibration. So here, since it has been traveled through the steep slopes and also the belt is passed over the wheels, there are chances of getting a segregation. Conveyors can place large volume of concrete quickly. It can be transported very quickly from one place to the another place, but we have to make sure that the slope of the conveyor belt should not be steep. So this is a conveyor belt. So you can see you can able to convey the concrete from one place to the other place, even if the distance is quite long also. You can easily convey the concrete from one place to the another place, but we should make sure that the concrete is not too steep, and also we should make sure that the concrete has been transported homogeneously in a compacted mass, so there should not be having any segregation in it.
Transportation of concrete Part 3. Commonly employed for road
So next I'll directly go to the
belt
conveyor.
conveyors have rarely adopted method of concrete transportation technique. The rare usage of this method is due to the concrete is likely to segregate on steep inclines, at transfer points, or change in the directions and at the points where the belt passes over the rollers.
So here when the belt passes over the roller, there will be more vibration, so concrete can be able to segregate here also. And at the transfer point at the end of the belt, when the concrete is made to fall over the place where it is to be transported, there also it has to be transported from a smaller height. If you transfer the concrete from the larger height, then higher the specific gravity will fall first, that is coarse and finer grade, then cement paste will fall.
And also, as the concrete is exposed over long stretches, it is likely to dry and stiffen during transportation, particularly in hot places. For safe transportation, it is
So in order to, if you use if there is no other option for us to use to transport the concrete, if we have a condition that we have to use a belt conveyor only, then the belt conveyor has to be cleanly covered with the fiberglass at the top, so that the concrete is not exposed to the environment. So more concrete, since it is taken over the long stretches, so the concrete, there are more chances of getting exposed to the environment. So if you are using belt conveyor in the concrete in for transporting, then that conveyor has to be covered with the fiberglass, or with any other material, so that the concrete will not be exposed to the
necessary to cover the
environment.
belt conveyor arrangement. The end of the belt conveyor system should be such that it removes all the mortar from the belt and prevent.
So that is regarding the belt conveyor. Next is the transit mixers. So this is known as a transit mixers. Most of you have seen this. Okay. So this is usually employed in the RMC plant also, and where it has to be transported also over the longer distances, then they will go for a transit mixers. So transit mixer is one of the most popular equipment for transporting a concrete over a longer distance, especially in RMC. So it has a capacity of 4 to 7 cubic meters. It has a capacity of around 4 to 7 cubic meters. So mixed concrete, whatever the concrete which is going to mix in the RMC plant, so when it is taken to, when it is transporting to the designated place, it in the most of these things, that the drum which is over here, it will be rotating, but it is not going to mix the concrete inside it. Okay, so there are two types of transit mixes. So first one, the concrete which is obtained from the RMC plant, which is mixed, it is directly transported, but it will be rotating. Most of us think that it is concrete are mixing inside the drum, but it will be in a agitated condition. Agitated condition means if you are not going to rotate the drum, then what will happen? The concrete will stick to the will adhere to the surface of the drum. So to avoid that, the concrete will be in a agitated condition. Okay, so the agitation will be around 2 to 6 revolutions per minute, whereas another types of transit mixers are there, where the batching is done at the plant. The batching is means the measurement of all the ingredients is done at the site, while transporting from one place to the another place where it has to be transported. At that time, it is going to mix inside the drum only. So there are two types. First one, it will be in a agitated condition, it is not going to mix, where mixing will be done in the RMC plant. In the second type, only batching will be done in the RMC plant, whereas the mixing will be done along the way from the RMC to the where it has to the where it has to be transported. The mixing will be done on the way itself. Okay, so that is the one more type of transit mixes. So actual speed of rotating of drum is around 4 to 16 RPM, whereas in the other second type of transit mixes, whereas in the first type of transit mixes, it is around 2 to 6 revolutions per minute. Why the revolutions per minute is very less? Because in the first type it is already mixed in the RMC plant, whereas in the second type the mixing has to be done on the way itself, so that the revolution will be more in the second type of second type of transit mixes. So actually speaking, within 1.5 hour of mixing, that is 90 minutes of mixing, or within 300 revolution of mixing, the concrete has to be placed at the site. That is, the concrete has to be transported at the site. That is, there are two conditions. One is within a limit of 300 evolutions, or within 1.5 hour of mixing, the concrete has to be transported to the site. So that's why here the admixtures will be added, that is retarders are added. Retarders means it is the slow setting admixtures. Why retarders are added? Because it has to be transported from over a long distance. If you don't add a retarder, then the concrete will set immediately. So that's why by adding a retarder, so the setting property will be delayed till it reaches the construction site. So this is about the transit mixer. And last one is a crane, bucket and ropeway. This is where one of the right equipment for transporting the concrete above the ground level, because it can able to transport the concrete horizontally, or it can move vertically also to place the concrete, and it can able to place the concrete at the exact point also. Okay, so whereas other transporting methods, it has either you can move horizontally or you can move vertically, whereas crane, bucket and ropeway, it can able to move in all the directions. And the advantage is it can be transported to the higher level also. Okay, if the building is having more than 10 floors or 20 floors, you can able to transport the concrete from ground level to the concrete which has to be done even at the 20 floor also. Skip and hoist method is not a will not be efficient to travel till such height. Then we have to go for crane, bucket and ropeway only, because it can able to transport the concrete more than even 20 floors also. And you can move the crane, that is crane transport the concrete even horizontally also, and you can place the concrete at the exact point where it is required. So here, ropeway and bucket will be obtained of various sizes to transport the concrete, whereas simple method will not be feasible. Whereas a simple method like whatever we discussed in the previous type may not be feasible to use, where for a longer distances, either horizontally or vertically. So in that way, this method will be quite efficient, and you will get a bucket and ropeway of various sizes also, which will be suitable for our work. For medium scale job, the bucket capacity may be 0.5 m cube. Okay, so the bucket will be of uh, for medium size, the maximum capacity of the bucket will be 0.5 meter cube. So here the mixing will be done at the convenient place or at the piers or at the abutments. This type of transporting method will be done only for the dams or for the bridges where you require to you have to cross the river. Will the river will be the obstruction from river will be the obstruction for transporting the concrete. In that way, this method is quite efficient enough. You can transport the concrete horizontally also over a longer distances. So where here the mixing will be done at the convenient place or at the abutments, and once the mixing is done, the bucket will be made to come near the mixing plant, and inside the bucket the mixing will be, whatever the mixing is done, it is poured inside the bucket, and the bucket will travel horizontally over a pulley to the required place where it has to be transported. As I already told, this is mainly used in the river concrete works in the river or dam construction, where this method of crane, rope, and bucket type is quite uh, adopted because it is economical also and it is efficient also. While discharging, the bucket either has to be tilted. Okay, so bucket has to be either tilted up and down, or below the bucket there will be a door, just like in the compaction factor you have a hopper and below that there will be a trap door. Even in the bucket also, below the bucket there will be a trap door. So if you open the door, the concrete whatever it is going to fill, it will be transported to the place. And while allowing the while allowing the door to open inside the, like with the bucket, so the height should be very minimum. It should not fall from the greater height. If you fall from the greater height, then there are more chances of getting a concrete segregated. So this is regarding a crane, bucket, and ropeway. I have a small video,
Transportation
last
of
video.
concrete Part 2. Crane, bucket and ropeway method. A crane and bucket is the recently used method for transporting concrete in high-rise construction projects. This method is being adopted widely as the cranes are fast and versatile to move concrete horizontally as well as vertically and allow to place the concrete at the exact location. The mixing of concrete is done at the ground level and transported to the location via skips or buckets attached to the cranes. The skips have discharge door at the bottom, whereas the buckets are tilted for emptying. The similar type of transportation adopted for concreting in a dam or the pier, which is called as ropeway and bucket method of concreting. The concrete is mixed at the bank or abutment at a convenient place, and the bucket is brought by a pulley and ropeway system. The movement of the buckets is completely controlled by pulley arrangement. As the size of the bucket is large, the effect of exposure to sun and wind will not have much effect on the concrete. In this method, concrete is discharged by tilting or by gate system attached at the bottom. The gate is controlled by either manually or mechanically. To be noted that, in both methods, the concrete is discharged from the smallest height as possible and should not be made to fall from great height.
I hope you understood. Crane, bucket, and ropeway. It is mainly used for a multi-story building if it has to be traveled vertically. So in all this bucket, either it has to be discharged manually or by mechanically, which having a door at the bottom, or you have to tilt the bucket for discharging the concrete. While discharging, it has to be discharged from a greater, not from the greater height, from the smaller height. And also it is advantages. You can take the bucket even over a longer distance also. I mean, even in the greater heights also, you can able to travel. We can take the bucket by means of a pulley arrangement also. So this is regarding uh, mixing and transporting. So in the next class, we'll be studying about place